and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
I am Adam Summers. You are in Season 6 of Wrestling at Random, where if you listen to the first episode, you heard us describe the theme for Season 6, which is more wrestling than ever. And I know we said that in Season 5, but we mean it in Season 6. I was wondering how long it would take for us to get something for the randomizer to pull something that would really prove what we're saying about the fact that we have 10,000 more wrestling shows in the randomizer than we had last year. 29,000 is the final count for the randomizer this year for wrestling shows. This week absolutely proves it. It is New Japan Pro Wrestling. However, this is not New Japan Pro Wrestling on TV Asahi. This is somehow not New Japan Pro Wrestling on HDNet. This is New Japan Pro Wrestling, or dare I say, as it was called on this show, Ring Warriors on Eurosport television in, we believe, 1994 or early 1995. This is episode 8 of Ring Warriors on Eurosport. There is no actual air date that we could find anywhere. This is in one of the deepest, darkest, dark web archives that we got access to and dumped into the randomizer. But yes, 1990s, New Japan Pro Wrestling called something else on Eurosport television with your commentary team of Gordon Soley and Sir Oliver Humperdinck.
Hump is back.
Big Daddy Dink in the house.
Yeah, we fired up the randomizer. It chose this show at random from the 29,000 pieces of content we shoved in there. So this is episode number 8 of New Japan Pro Wrestling on Eurosport. I had to look up what Eurosport was. This is...
You clearly have not sailed the high seas to watch international hockey before.
I have not, and I see now that it is it's basically like a sports pay cable broadcast channel for a bunch of wacky sports. They've got quite the variety of sports offered on the Eurosport channel, especially back in 1990. What did we say this was?
94 or 90, early 95. I actually have, Jeremy, I don't know if you have in front of you, I have some history on the Ring Warriors show that I can tell the good people.
Do tell us about Ring Warriors.
So in the early 1990s, Florida-based promoter Howard Brody partnered with Hiro Matsuda, a man who has appeared quite often both in the free feed and the bonus feed while being wildly uninteresting most of the time. They created World Superstars of Wrestling, Inc. And together out of that, they created an Americanized version of New Japan Pro Wrestling's World Pro Wrestling Japanese television show for international TV called Ring Warriors. The show appeared on Eurosport, ESPN Asia, South African Broadcasting Corporation, and various other networks around the world. Initially, the show was hosted by Sir Oliver Humperdinck and Craig DeGeorge.
Wow.
Craig DeGeorge was replaced by Gordon Soley, who had recently retired from WCW. The goal of Ring Warriors was to eventually create a U.S.-based promotion with the same philosophy and style as what was presented on TV, but Hiro Matsuda died before that goal was realized. It continues, though. Ring Warriors, in an attempt to get into the U.S. market in 1997, partnered with the now defunct Video and Webstar, broadcasting on one of the first video-based websites. Shot on location in Tampa Bay, Hiro Matsuda and Howard Brody produced 6 one-hour shows with Gordon Soley and Bruno Sammartino, including Big Daddy Dink doing interview segments with the likes of Dan Severn, Danny Spivey, and others. With the internet in such an infancy, however, technology and bandwidth could not support the endeavor, so the broadcast only lasted these 6 episodes. Unofficially, Ring Warriors, that version of it, was the first ever wrestling television show to be broadcast on the internet.
We talked about the struggles when the WWE's version of ECW had to go to the internet and broadcast on the website, and what a way ahead of its time, and just bandwidth constraints is an understatement for.
To be clear, that ECW, WWE ECW on the internet, that was like what, 2009, 2010, 2011?
Yeah, exactly. 2010, 2011. And it was in its infancy.
13 years after this was still not something that could really be pulled off with any great degree. So, I mean, they were ambitious, if nothing else.
So this is a way past his prime Gordon Solie. Those close to Solie, as reported in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, said that he enjoyed calling the no-nonsense style of Japanese wrestling. This was a contrast to the changes that were happening in 1996 domestic wrestling. Solie was a believer in pro wrestling, maintaining athletic credibility, and at times, particularly in his later years, he would show subtle disdain for where the product had gotten, in his view, quote, out of hand.
The fascinating thing throughout this episode that we watched and we're going to review, 1995, or 94, whatever it is here at Gordon Solie, is the exact same announcer that late stage Jim Ross calling New Japan Pro Wrestling on Access TV going into AEW would be. It's the exact same thing.
He's thing.
Past his prime. He's lost his fastball. He ends up really enjoying calling New Japan Pro Wrestling because it's like the more athletic based wrestling that he called, in his heyday, but there's still some crankiness. There's still some just weirdness where he's not 100% into it. For me, like, I know we haven't even started talking on the show. It's my overriding thought watching this is how much they are the same person separated by 20, 22, 25 years.
And it's so funny because as announcers, that was the comp Jim Ross's entire time was, well, he's the next Gordon Solie. And here we are, even in the late stages, those similarities remain the same and calling the same product of New Japan Pro Wrestling. I will say that Sir Oliver Humperdinck is no Josh Barnett. That's for sure.
He is no Josh Barnett in so many ways, shapes, and forms. So to get into the show itself, we get like a decent little open with a montage of mostly footage from the Tokyo Dome. No New Japan logo or branding, no lion mark. There's a Ring Warriors logo, and that's the thing to note throughout this show. They never say New Japan Pro Wrestling. The titles are called the Ring Warrior titles. It's definitely... It's interesting. I guess it makes more sense after reading that, about how they were going to try to start a Ring Warriors in the U.S. This was going to be sort of the launching pad for it. But as you mentioned, the show opens with Gordon Solie and Sir Oliver Humperdinck. They're never shown. We just hear them.
No, these are overdubs. They were not in Japan.
No, they're not in Japan. We don't even see them in a studio, doing post-production. We only hear them. And we immediately jump into our first match, which is the Hellraisers, Road Warrior Hawk and Kensuke Sasaki with the face paint, with the Road Warrior style gear, except it's black and neon green. He is Power Warrior, or as they just call him here, Power. They are taking on
like it's his team. First name. It's a Power Warrior. His first name is Power.
Birth certificate, first name Power, last name Warrior. I always get a kick out of that. They are taking on the team, and what a team it is. Katsumi Fujinami and Yoshiaki Fujiwara, he of the Fujiwara armbar, and just being an awesome, mean, tough dude. Here they just call him Yoshi Fujiwara, but that's closer than we'll get with some names later on. We are told by Big Daddy Dink that the Hellraisers are the top contenders to the Steiner Brothers Ring Warriors, not IWGP, but Ring Warriors Tag Team Championships. The first thing I noticed right away as the action starts is we have dubbed crowd noise, like the Thunder Heat Machine is laying over the actual ambient crowd noise in the arena.
Hawk powers out of a full Nelson attempt, and immediately Sir Oliver Humperdinck has to explain where Road Warrior Animal is, because if you're watching this in the US, you're like, where's the other Road Warrior I'm used to seeing with Hawk? And Animal is out hurt. So Power Warrior is in, and he gets a good ovation. Fujiwara's in, goes right for the armbar, couldn't get it. Gordon gets a little attitude here, saying, quote,
"Oh, this is amazing. This is great." So first we're told that, by the way, just as far as announcer notes, that Fujiwara submitted Hiroshi Hase with the Fujiwara armbar on last week's show. Then you explain this, because this is incredible.
So in mid calling the action, we just hear, quote, "Beg your pardon? Just give me the note. Don't. Just hand me the note. Don't try to whisper. Thank you."
The fact that he did not say "goddamn" at any part of this is absolutely incredible. Even while being unprofessional, he still maintained the slightest bit of professionalism. This did not come off as like, I'm getting a note. Oh, we've got a note from the promoter. This came off as a cranky old man that was not happy with being passed this note in the way that it was passed to him.
In the match, I would have been effective, but right now it's too early on.
Yeah, power is a little bit too strong now. Hasn't been worn down enough. Beg your pardon? Well, just give me the note, please. Don't try and whisper. Hand me the note. Thank you. Well, listen to this.
And not edited out of a not live broadcast.
No, this was not a live broadcast, but this was clearly a live to tape, one take, one take only. There's a few moments. This is the most noteworthy of them. But the note is that Masahiro Chono and Super Machine, who is Super Strong Machine, they have been rivals in recent weeks on Ring Warriors, but they will be tag team partners on this largely tag team themed edition of the Ring Warriors television show.
Fujiwara ends up with the guard on Hawk. Hawk fights from the bottom. Power Warrior works over Fujinami with a suplex, as Gordon Solie would say.
This, just to rewind, just the sentence of Fujiwara has Road Warrior Hawk in the guard. This is already an incredible television show, because, like, I know they obviously were both in New Japan Pro Wrestling for large portions, or for at least for significant portions of their career. But I did not go into this show thinking I was going to see shoot style exchanges between Yoshiaki Fujiwara and Road Warrior Hawk, who, if you've been listening on the bonus feed in recent months, we've seen a lot of different eras of Road Warrior Hawk, including feral human Road Warrior Hawk in 1983. To see him here doing slick exchanges with Fujiwara is quite the deal.
Yeah, even my notes say that Hawk is looking slow here, and it may just be because this is mid-90s Hawk, and we had just literally been watching back-to-back episodes on the bonus feed of early 80s Hawk, who was just a maniac. And,
83 and 89 respectively, and 83 just a total, like I said, feral human, and 89 a little bit more polished, but still a maniac.
If you aren't aware of our bonus content, it's over at patreon.com/wrestlingatRandom, or in your Apple Podcast feed. You can subscribe right there to all the bonus content. $5 a month unlocks the entire back catalog of the bonus content, nearly 200 episodes, if you can believe it, including, like we just said, a couple of recent 80s Road Warrior appearances over the last couple of weeks, if you're listening in linear fashion. It's all evergreen content over there as well, just like the free feed. So if you're looking for more Wrestling at Random content, a lot of really familiar stuff, and a lot of stuff that is wild and out of left field that you're not aware of. All of it is over at the bonus content. So check out Wrestling at Random patreon.com/Wrestling at Random. Hawk eventually muscles up Fujinami for a press slam. Fujinami gets put on the shoulders of Power Warrior, and Fujinami breaks up the Doomsday Device attempt. Power Warrior gets caught in a Dragon Sleeper. Hawk's in there to break it up. Power Warrior hits almost a Power Slam Brainbuster combo for the pin.
He hits an early version of the Northern Lights bomb. It's crazy because you don't think of the Northern Lights bomb as starting from that Irish whip into the Power Slam position that Sasaki would hit his great Power Slam. But this is total Northern Lights bomb. This was really fun for what it was. I was terrified. I know 94, I should say, Fujiwara was not wasn't brittle by any stretch, but still, he wasn't a young man. I was terrified with the potential visual of him
Doomsday
taking
device.
a doomsday device. I was cheering from my couch when Fujinami broke that up. But this was a fun curiosity of a match, and is also one of them, by the way, that I was able to find an actual date for.
Oh, nice.
This match was part of the Super Grade Tag League, which would be referred to on this show on Ring Warriors as the $1 Million Tag League several times. But it was the semi-main event of a show on October 24th, 1994, Kurume, Fukuoka, Japan Prefectural Gymnasium, approximately 3,200 fans in attendance.
Our next match on the show is Super Machine, not Bill Eadie. Super Machine here is Junji Harada, and he's teaming with Masahiro Chono to take on the team of Yoshi Yatsu and Riki Choshu.
Well, Riki Choshu, or as Gordon Sully and Oliver Humperdinck called him throughout the entire match, Choshu Riki, which I guess is better
correct.
than
technically correct.
Yeah, they're just doing the Japanese where you say the last name first. It's just so funny because they didn't do that for anyone else on the show. And Riki Choshu is someone I know for a fact that Gordon Sully and Oliver Humperdinck were aware of from his time in the States. So they know that it's Riki Choshu. But it's not as bad, Jeremy, as on the bonus feed. That's really crazy out there WWF Madison Square Garden show we reviewed not terribly long ago, where both Howard Finkel in ring announcing and Vince McMahon on commentary called him Riki Koshu.
Yes, I forgot about that. Riki Koshu.
I was
entire time.
The entire time, just like here with Choshu Riki. I was very excited, though, when I saw Yatsu and Choshu together as a team. This is a little bit past the peak, definitely past the peak of Yoshiaki Yatsu. There's a time in the mid to late 80s in All Japan Pro Wrestling that Yoshiaki Yatsu was one of the best wrestlers in the world, both tag team and singles. Here, he's not quite what he was, but still exciting to see him here teaming with Choshu.
And it's always good to point out that this is coolest guy in the room version of Chono.
Oh, yes. This is all black Aristris era Chono post broken neck at the hands of Steve Austin with the sit out tombstone pile driver. Then Austin would have his own neck broken by Owen Hart just a few years later. So he can't take some of the bumps. Some of the athleticism is gone. So he basically had to transition from being like a Japanese version of Bret Hart to being the coolest dude you've ever seen. And he nailed that transition and then some.
Chono starts by beating down Choshu. Choshu fights back. Yatsu runs wild with headbutts and a belly-to-belly suplex.
A great belly-to-belly suplex. Yatsu with the Olympic-level wrestling background on display here. Also hits a big side slam. We also had at the start of this match, Jeremy, another one of those. They definitely didn't bother doing retakes on commentary. Big Daddy Dink gets confused. Doesn't know, he gets Choshu wrong. He's like Chono or Machine gets introduced, and he says it's Choshu. He said, I'm on the wrong guys, I think. And they just left that in.
Yatsu's bleeding as Super Machine and Chono are in control. Chono with a hot tag. He runs wild. Chono gets rammed into an exposed buckle. We get a diving headbutt off the top by Machine. The tag team champions at this point we're told are the Steiners, which is exciting. We won't see them here.
Machine is huge, by the way. Just a big, thick, muscled up dude. Like not like a bodybuilder, but just a big, thick weightlifter. Yeah. And can move. He can move fairly well for his size. I was also amused during this sequence. A few things on commentary. Gordon Sully actually calls him Riki Choshu and then, quote unquote, corrects himself.
No,
and says Choshu Riki. Also, I don't know if anyone else would notice this but me, but I'm pretty sure that Oliver Humperdinck was getting Yoshiaki Yatsu confused with Tadao Yasuda, who had recently come into New Japan around this time period. because he calls him Yatsuda, and then there's another time early in the match where he's calling Yatsu like a giant, like the Japanese giant, and then Gordon I think kind of understands that Dinkskin Aaron's like, well, he's big, but he's not as big as that Yasuda fella.
I think the first time we texted each other about anything on this show was Choshu and Yatsu hitting a spike pile driver on the machine.
Yes, a spike pile. Well, they hit two things. So they hit an awesome, and I remember this from All Japan when they would team together, this back suplex diving choke slam combination where Choshu has him up in a back suplex position and Yatsu jumps off the top rope in the choke slam position, drops him down, and then they immediately hit a top rope spike pile driver, but that isn't the finish.
No, Machine's in a leg lock, and he submits, and Chono walks out. Your winner, Yatsu and Choshu Riki.
I also thought it was interesting. Yatsu, it's an awesome power slam. Then that leg lock, it's the Mr. Saito prison lock, which we see now. Masa Kitamiya and Pro Wrestling Noah use that, but it was interesting to see Yatsu use it. They did pay off the story of these guys not getting along. At first, as the match was going along, I'm like, is this just one of those things that like the announcers made up that wasn't a real story, but they just wanted to have a story in this match that otherwise didn't? But no, Chono walks out on him. Also, I thought it was noteworthy that like we had dubbed music for the Hellraisers, but here they had no problem playing the iconic Power Hall Riki Choshu music, which made me happy to hear. There's a very odd transition. They don't go to commercial break. They just like jump cut into the middle of the next match, which is Michiyoshi Ohara, who we've seen a few times in this podcast. The Mad Dog, just kind of a crazy brawler against another guy we've seen.
I'm sorry, Adam, you were incorrect. It's T. Ohara.
Yes, T. Ohara taking on Masayoshi Aoyagi, who is he did some the Greatest Club 17 martial arts title match on the New Japan Super Show, but didn't air on TV against Riki Choshu. He's in full gi, but they call him Master Aoyagi because they cannot pronounce Masashi Aoyagi. So that's we'll see that again on commentary another time. But this is so weird, like the production on this. We just go straight into this this match happening. This is a brutal fight of a match. This is, Ohara coming from an amateur wrestling background, Aoyagi being a karate fighter, and they are just beating the hell out of each other, including, I would say, outside of those sit-out tombstones that we mentioned, the most terrifying regular tombstone pile driver I have ever seen in my life, delivered by Ohara to Aoyagi. Gordon Soley is absolutely mortified by what he has seen here.
I am Gordon Soley because I am also mortified as Ohara kills this man with a tombstone pile driver.
That somehow is not the finish. Ohara then hits a top rope knee drop to the throat. That's also not the finish. Ohara then dumps Aoyagi wildly to the floor. Aoyagi is up first somehow. This is great, like 90s uncooperative, different fight style New Japan that we love, that has such a different vibe from obviously modern New Japan or anything else in wrestling right now. Aoyagi, like I said, up first, rails Ohara hard into the guardrail on the floor, some kicks, and throws him back in.
Yeah, I note here that Gordon thinks it's a 10 count outside the ring. Oh no, I was very concerned about that, and I was worried someone was going to slip him a note to let him know it's 20. Double whammy.
Gordon would cut someone if he got another note. Keep those notes away.
Back inside, Ohara hits a choke slam, but gets cut off with a kick, and everybody's down. Some kicks from Aoyagi. Ohara kicks out. We're running up on a finish as Aoyagi with a kick to the head gets the pin. What did you think of this overall? The way it started immediately, it was just like it took me a minute to like figure out where get my bearings straight on where we were. But I forgot how much I enjoy when it's difficult and uncooperative sometimes.
This was delightfully uncooperative, not smooth.
No.
Just rugged, and it felt like a fight. Two guys from different fighting disciplines. The kicks from Aoyagi, a couple of jumping spin kicks, that nasty jumping high kick that was kind of like an enziguri, but more of just like a jumping version of like a crow cop kick to the side of the head. Tremendous stuff, and like I said, completely different than what you'd see in modern wrestling. If you think about, obviously this didn't air in the United States, but airing in other English-speaking areas throughout the world, think about how different this particular match, this fight, is from anything else you would see on televised wrestling outside of Japan in the mid-90s.
Our next match. Takayuki Iizuka and Akira Nogami taking on the team of Keiji Muto and Tommy Kojima. I think I texted you. My text only just said like Tommy Kojima.
Tommy Kojima. This is in fact a young Satoshi Kojima, and it's just, there's no rhyme or reason to this. They're able to say Takayuki Iizuka
yes,
and Akira Nogami, but they can't say Satoshi Kojima. So bizarre. But I'm hyped. This is mid-90s Muto.
I'm hyped.
Young Kojima, which we haven't seen a ton of. Akira Nogami is always an interesting guy to watch. And Iizuka, I mean, this is, like we saw Super Show 1 Iizuka, where he was very young and very athletic. We saw Wrestle War 92, Iizuka teaming with Fujinami in that brutal fight of a match against the Steiners where his eye got completely closed. And that was a period where like everyone thought Iizuka was the next big superstar. He was going to be like the guy that would be not taking over from Muto because he was still going to be there, but he was on that track. Here in 94 going in 95, this is Iizuka where he's very good, but it's clear that he does not have the charisma, the presence to be a top guy. And then you fast forward to 20 years later, and he's got a shaved head, and he's got a crazy goatee, and he's biting people and hit them with an iron fist. What a journey that man went on.
Yeah, when you think about when we saw him as like practically a young lion all the way through to him and his retirement, like what a transformation! The many lives of Iizuka here. Hump is immediately taking credit for all of Muto's success. I found that to be funny. I do like that, both Gordon and Humperdinck know Muto very well, obviously.
Well, this was so with Gordon, this is very much where, again, like Jim Ross, where there would be like a guy or two in New Japan that Jim Ross would just freak out over, and still like in modern AEW when they show up, Tanahashi is an example. He loved Nakamura. Here, Gordon remembers Keiji Muto, great Muta from his time in WCW, and he sounds 10 years younger.
Yes.
At least Gordon Soley once he sees Muto, and Muto gets into the ring. It's also interesting that for the first couple of minutes, again, like they didn't put a lot into the production here. The first couple of minutes, unlike any of the other matches at the start of the show, we hear the Japanese commentary underneath Gordon and Oliver Humperdinck calling this.
Mat wrestling early. They get the heat on Kojima. Muto gets the tag, and Iizuka keeps the pressure on, working over Muto. The heat's on Muto for a while, working a leg. Muto makes a comeback, hits a power drive elbow, and tags Kojima back in.
Yeah, the power drive elbow here, Gordon and Dink are both like, yeah, this is the great, this is Keiji Muto. This is the great Muto we wanted to see. Also, around this time in the match, this is again where they just like are making up storylines. They're saying this is a de facto tournament to get to the Steiners. This is an actual tournament. This is a super great tag league. They again talk about this being $1 million tournament. Maybe this was a million yen tournament. I don't know that it was a $1 million tournament. I actually do also have here, I believe I had the we'll go through this. I believe I had the show that this took place on, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe that was maybe this is not one of them that I had that for. Never mind.
We get a gut buster from Kojima. Nogami with a nice drop kick. Kojima starts taking a beating. At this point, Gordon thinks Muto should get in there. Here's
yes, he wants to see more of Keiji Muto, but it also works in storyline where like this is still a young Kojima. Like, it's not young Lion, he's not in black trunks, but he's young still. He does not have the trademark orange. He's big, but he's nowhere near as thick. He's not the bread intake has not increased to the sufficient levels for him to become a full-fledged heavyweight. Super athletic, though. Like, he hits a couple big, like, jumping elbow drops in this match. Gets a lot of air. He looks good.
Lots of crabs. We get a full Boston, a half. We get a lion tamer on Kojima.
Yeah, a early lion tamer, pre-Chris Jericho WCW lion tamer. You wonder if here this lion tamer by Akira Nogami, if maybe Jericho had seen that and adapted that. Also, you mentioned the drop kick. There's a top rope drop kick from Akira Nogami. Maybe it's just because it was my first exposure to him. Like, seeing him in that heavily edited down but great match at this WCW New Japan Super Show 1 against Liger, like, he was never better than he was or more interesting than he was in that match. Every time, hundreds of times I've probably seen him since then, I'm always like, oh, I get excited. And like, yeah, he's not quite what I remember in my first exposure to him.
Muto finally gets the hot tag, hits the handspring elbow. An abdominal stretch that's called, quote, a standing guillotine by Gordon Soley.
I love how Gordon does allow, though, that like some people, meaning everyone else in the world, calls it an abdominal stretch, but he's just going to call it a standing guillotine. Iizuka makes the save. At this point, Muto tags back out to Kojima, and Gordon says it's a nice display of sportsmanship by Muto, tagging out to his younger partner, basically saying like Muto sees that Kojima is capable and he wants to give him the match, which is actually in storyline what would happen in a lot of these type of matches, even to modern day, where you'll see a big star teamed with a younger guy or even a young lion, and like the big star won't spend a whole lot of time in the match. They're encouraging the young guy to try to win it on his own.
All four men in the ring. Nogami hits a top rope splash, double drop kick on Muto. Multiple Uranagis on Kojima, and Iizuka.
Great Uranagis from Iizuka, who you don't necessarily associate, and you think much more of Hiroshi Hase, but these were about as close to a Hase-style Uranagi as you're ever going to see. As you said, they get the win. Gordon says this is a major upset, which isn't true. This is, again, the classic thing where like the veterans pin the young guy who has a star next to him. If they had Team Muto, this would be headline making. That is not exactly the case here.
And we go to our final match on this show. Shinji Otani, who's a favorite of this podcast. We've seen a lot of Otani over the years.
You would know him as Shinjiro Otani. Here, that last RO was just too tough to say. So he's just Shinji Otani. He takes on Tatsu Ishikawa, who is actually Tokumitsu Ishizawa, who would go on to be Kendo Kashin.
Grappling on the mat to start. Otani working a leg. Ishikawa gets an arm as they grapple on the mat.
This grappling is awesome.
It is.
Fast pace. Like light years ahead of any grappling you'd see on a modern professional wrestling show, even with guys that are trying to work this style. This is high level stuff, and Otani, the snap and speed on everything, even just transitions, go behinds, waist locks, just you see he is a high level wrestler even here in 1994.
No, I had to recalibrate my brain because I'm watching this and I slipped into modern eyes watching this, and I'm like, whoa, wait a second, this is like 94. I need to recalibrate how I'm watching this, and it's incredibly impressive, the pace that they're moving on for the grappling that they're doing in 1994. Think about some of the shows we've seen. We were just complaining about some of the stuff we were watching from 93 and 92 here, right? So 94, right in line. Stuff you weren't seeing in the U.S. for sure. Next week on the show, Antonio Inoki is taking on Tenryu. Damn it, randomizer! We're off by a week again. It does it to us every time.
Yes, Tenryu versus Inoki. And it's so funny because, like, here again, they never refer to this as New Japan Pro Wrestling, even though that's clearly what it is. They call it Ring Warriors. But then they say Tenryu from the War promotion.
War.
And they say, and then like Oliver Humperdinck, from the War promotion. That means he's not from here. This should be great. But of course, just like with Master Aoyagi, who is not, in fact, the father of Master Wato, here they call Tenryu. They can't call him Genichiro Tenryu. They can't call him Genichiro Tenryu. They call him General Tenryu, which is just hilarious. I'm like, man.
Big Wrestle One vibes.
We missed Hustle. We missed
Hustle vibes. Yeah,
like Generalissimo Takada should have had General. Should have been teaming with General Tenryu in Hustle. Go way back into the archives to find that Hustle episode. I believe on the bonus feed, one of the first like 5 or 10 episodes of the bonus feed. Also, we have Oliver Humperdinck talking about how. They call him Ishikawa, but it's Ishizawa, the future Kendo Kashin, is a disciple of Yoshiaki Fujiwara. But Oliver Humperdinck says tutorage instead of tutelage, which amused me greatly. But this is, regardless of the wacky commentary, including Gordon Soley saying that Oliver Humperdinck offered Otani a contract. Dink says no comment. Dink says it was an 80-20 split. As they're talking about Otani having just recently won the junior heavyweight title. Regardless of all the wackiness of the commentary, this is just so like shoot style greatness, or at least like amateur shoot style greatness. This is so fun and just, again, light years different from anything happening in professional wrestling in the United States at this point.
Yeah, my notes just say, is Hump getting more drunk as this broadcast goes on? Because he is just tripping over himself and making no sense.
Talking about him and Gordon having a side about Fifi, the 390-pound girlfriend of Oliver Humperdinck. Dink is mad because he wants her at 400 pounds. He's not happy she shed those 10 pounds.
So Otani's done messing around. He puts on a single leg crab. After a rope break, Otani stays working on the leg on the mat. Ishikawa with a leg lock. Another rope break. Otani on offense. Goes for the jumping spin kick. Ishikawa holds the rope, so Otani just drop kicks him instead. And Ishikawa goes up and over the top to the floor.
So great. Otani is just, my God, was he an incredible professional.
So good.
Obviously, we all continue to hope for the best for him and his recovery after the horrible injuries that he sustained a couple years back in a match in Japan. But my God, is he great here. Also, again, going back to 1994, 1995, Gordon Soley being the exact same person as Jim Ross in the late 2010s into the 2020s. Here, Gordon Soley is talking about Otani and how he has Danny Hodge-like double tendon strength.
They keep reversing each other's leg locks. Huge slap and a spin kick by Otani. Full Boston Crab, which is basically the lion tamer again. He gets the ropes. But Otani pulls him back to the middle, full Boston Crab, and Otani gets the submission victory. This match was awesome. I had a great time watching this.
It was so fun. Like, obviously, there's matches. As this closes out the episode of Ring Warriors, there's matches on the show with bigger stars. We see Keiji Muto. We see Road Warrior Hawk, the Hellraisers. We see Fujiwara, Fujinami, Choshu. For my money, the two best things on this show were that wild fight between Ohara and Aoyagi, and then this just great, just grappling fest before Otani finally just had enough and slapped the hell out of Ishizawa and ended things with the Boston Crab. Love those two things. Like, debriefing on this show as a whole. There's a lot, 30 some odd years after this aired, and we have live English language commentary on New Japan, beyond New Japan, other companies as well out of Japan. It's treated very respectfully. It's treated 100% like Japanese commentary would treat it. So looking at it through 2024, 2025 eyes, it's like, oh man, there's some stuff on here. But my God, at this point, I would have been like 13, 14 years old when this show aired outside the United States. I was desperate for a New Japan show with English language announcing to air in the United States. I wrote to WCW regularly. I wrote to the After magazines begging for this to happen. Is this going to happen? How could it happen? Even with some of the things here, I can guarantee you 13, 14-year-old Adam, if this was airing at like 2 a.m. on WJYS in Chicago, I would have thought this was the greatest thing in the world, actually getting to see weekly New Japan Pro Wrestling, even if it wasn't called that, even if they got the names wrong, even if Big Daddy Deke was drunk, even if Gordon Soleil was old and lost his fastball, none of that would have mattered. By the standards of how Japanese professional wrestling was presented outside of Japan in 1994, 1995, I would have been totally happy with this.
That's a perfectly eloquent way to frame what this was. After you gave me the history of this, I now imagine Hiro Matsuda waving your letter and demanding that we have this show in the United States. So
going to every local affiliate throughout the country.
So yeah, no, I would have loved this too. I think anybody who was watching for any sort of Japanese content to show up, be it your WCW super shows, be it the guys on excursions in American promotions, and just consuming the magazines at the time, you were desperate for content, and to get there was
desperate
if you weren't a tape trader, or in the scene, it was very difficult in the 90s to get your hands on that stuff. And just even the people that were desperate, like that were like doing it as their job, like you look at the observers from this period, and Meltzer is 3, 4, 6 months behind on Japanese television reviews because he's doing tape trading and getting the tapes, and it was just so hard to get the content.
Yeah, the only way to get the content was tape trading. I was a little too young at that point to really be into that scene. Or if you happen to live in an area that had like a Japanese grocery store or a Japanese video store, something like that, that would they'd rent out the tapes. Like there's a place in Chicago, Mitsuwa in the Chicago area, that still does that now. You can go and rent, it'll be like rent or buy. Maybe a month after the air, you can get the New Japan television show, the half-hour weekly TV show that's on TV Asahi. But that was the only way to do that back then. So having something like this, that for warts and all, you got it and you got to watch it straight off the bat, I would have given anything to have access to this as a child.
I think we covered our favorite things on this show. Worst thing on this show for you?
I mean, Choshu, Riki,
Choshu.
General Tenru, that sort of stuff. But again, it goes with the territory. For me, the worst thing was if you take all that out, the obvious stuff, the worst thing was the completely unnecessary Thunder Heat Machine, or in modern times, the WWE Thunderdome fake crowd noises that they for some reason still use. It was unnecessary. New Japan crowds were hot in the mid-90s. You didn't need it. And the other thing was just that weird jump cut into the start of the Aoyagi Ohara match, which was great once it got going. But that, like you said, just really, the first few minutes of that match, you felt like you woke up from a dream and you didn't really know where you were, type of thing. It was weird.
And yeah, I think you nailed it there. I mean, we talked about the glaring things on commentary already throughout the show, but otherwise, super fun watch. This would have been a great, if you were in Europe and you got this on Eurosport, or you were in a country that got Eurosport and you had access to Ring Warriors, make sure you hit us up on social media. Let us know what your experience was like with the Eurosport program. You can follow us on all the socials at WrestleAtRandom. Blue Sky, Threads, X, anywhere, Instagram, anywhere. Shoot us a message.
MySpace, Blurty, LiveJournal.
At WrestleAtRandom. Tell us about your experience with Eurosport and Ring Warriors. Make sure that you're telling your wrestling fan friends about the podcast. Help them subscribe to the podcast. We are 6 seasons of evergreen content. It's new to you if you haven't gone back and listened to the back catalog of this podcast. It's all there. And like I mentioned, all of the bonus content you can get over at patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom. The YouTube channel is the other place you can support us for free. Make sure you subscribe, like and subscribe, as the kids say, over at the YouTube channel. Just search for Wrestling at Random Podcast over there, and you can see the video version of this podcast, and you can see both Adam and I wearing New Japan shirts today.
Which, by the way, I told you before we started recording, I was going to mention why I chose this particular shirt here. Eurosport Ring Warriors New Japan. It's one of the first attempts to present New Japan outside of Japan. Here, the New Japan Strong shirt that I'm wearing is the modern attempt to present New Japan Pro Wrestling to an American wrestling audience.
Apropos, perfect. And so if you want to consume your podcast via video form, it's over there as well. If you don't, we could still use the subscribe and everything. It helps us work the algorithm so other wrestling fans can find the show. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to call it a podcast. Adam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Howard Brody and Hiro Matsuda, of all people. And I will say, thank you, Gordon Soley and Sir Oliver Humperdinck, because as trying as the commentary was to listen to it sometimes here, those of us who watched and rented the FMW Tokyo Pop VHS tapes, it could have been so much worse.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening. And we'll talk to you again next time.